We hear the excuse all the time. Why leave the West? We have huge masajid, halal food on every corner, and Islamic schools. Why make it hard for yourself by moving to the Middle East? It's a fair question, especially right now. If you turn on the news or scroll through your feed, everyone is screaming that we are on the verge of World War III. The media loves to paint the Muslim world as one giant collapsing war zone. Unfortunately, they rarely show you the actual picture on the ground. But here's the reality. Even with all the geopolitical panic, Muslims are still quietly packing their bags and making their way to the Muslim world. They are looking past the headlines. In this roundtable, meet brother Abu Mustafa. He walked away from a comfortable, safe life in Canada to relocate his family to El Medina. And he didn't do it for a better lifestyle. He did it because of the one thing every Muslim parent in the West is quietly terrified of right now: the cultural environment our children are being forced to absorb. But here's the reality check no one talks about on social media. Passion doesn't pay the bills. When Abu Mustafa arrived in Medina, he was dealing with unstable contracts, inconsistent income, and the very real threat of having to pack up and go back to Canada. Let's get into it. Okay, before we get started, recently there was a comment that read something like, if you have to pay to work, then that has to be a red flag. The problem I have with this comment is that we happily pay for traditional degrees and tech certifications, which in reality have no real guarantee that you'll get a job. In reality, only about 34% of traditional degree holders ever recoup their costs within 5 years. Why is that? It's because they're buying a piece of paper with no real job support. We recommend and support Muslim Certified because it aligns with our goal of helping Muslims make and sustain their hijrah. You don't just get training in appointment setting, but you get mentorship and direct access to vetted halal job roles so you can start earning right away. You aren't just left to figure it out on your own. Muslim Certified is a great remote online work opportunity to help you fund your hijrah. For more information, click the link in the description. All right, Brother Abu Mustafa, we're happy to have you here on the round table. And your situation is an interesting case. You're originally from Canada, is that right?
That's right. I'm originally from
Okay,
Toronto, Canada. That's where I spent most of my life.
mashallah. And what's your origin, if you don't mind me asking? Your family or your...
Yeah, we're Pakistani. Both my mom and dad are both Pakistani. My dad, kind of made moved to the West in the 80s, and so I was born in the West.
Mashallah. Okay, so um, a lot of people till now don't understand why people want to leave the West and come to Muslim countries. There's a lot of Muslims there. People say that there's Muslim communities there, and there's really no need for you to leave those communities to come to the Muslim world. So before we get into that topic, if you don't mind introducing yourself, maybe your background, so people can know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I'm Abu Mustafa. I have a Canadian background. Grew up in the West. Spent most of my life in the West up until 2023, basically, when I made Hijrah, Alhamdulillah, to Medina, Alhamdulillah.
So, what was your motivation to leave Canada? I hear Canada has a pretty big Muslim community there. Why did you want to leave Canada and make hijrah? By the way, with that question, I want to ask you: did you go back? Did you travel during your life? Like, did you go to Pakistan and go to different places before you made hijrah?
Yeah, yeah. So I graduated university in 2014, and I made I did my first Umrah in 2015. So that was like the first time I was in an Islamic environment. Uh, I remember
mashallah.
coming to Mecca and Medina and experiencing something I never experienced before. Which is an
Mm,
Islamic lifestyle, a completely Islamic culture. Completely in line with our values as Muslims. Something that we've never seen growing up in the West. So that was like, I guess, like a culture shock, but in a good way. Seeing
mm,
people that are living like that. Subhanallah. For me that was totally something new. So I remember going back to the West, back to Canada, and something changed at that time for me internally. And the next year I got married. So for me at that point of time, I was, I was already thinking about the future, potentially starting a family very soon with my wife. And what kind of, environment I want to be in, and also, my I want my wife to be in, and my children in the future. So I remember it was always in the back of my mind to move to a Muslim country. I don't know which country I would move to, but I just wanted to get out of the West. And it kind of just
mm,
built the internal feeling just built over the years. And when I had my firstborn in 2020, it reached like a really like type of a boiling point, you can say, where I was very very worried. I really wanted to get out before he was at the age of being put into school. I really did not want to put him into the educational system of the West.
mm. Was it something that you experienced during your life that motivated you to make sure that your children wouldn't have to go through the same educational system there?
Yeah, definitely, because I also lived in New York City, before, when I
Mm,
was really young. I was actually born in New York City, and you know, we moved to Toronto. We moved to Canada, and when I was 5 years old, I lived in Montreal, and then I also lived in Toronto for most of my life. And there's the environment, and have seeing Muslims, and my friends, and my I guess you could say my acquaintances, and the things that we went through as children, as teenagers, as adolescents, that our parents never went through. So they never even knew what kind of the challenges we were facing as as youth, because they came from Pakistan, so they don't really know what's going on. And
mm,
I see the fitna is actually really real. It's very scary.
mm,
I could have gone
mm,
down the wrong path if it wasn't for Allah's grace. So many people I know went down the wrong path. Some people came back. Some
mm,
people, they ended up, in different situations. SubhanAllah.
mm,
So that's definitely something, the number one thing I think I do not want my children to go through something like that. Like, if I can provide them with a safe environment that safeguards from those things, from those fitna, like, why not? Like, I think that's a duty as a father, right? To provide for your
mm,
children. So
mm.
yeah.
Mashallah. Uh, so you decided that you wanted to make hijrah, and I would ask, there are many Muslim countries out there. So why did you choose to make hijrah to Medina? Was it just the Umrah, or was it something else that motivated you to try to move to Medina?
No, of course it was, it is the best places are in the world are Mecca and Medina, right? So
Mm.
Medina, anyone who's been to Medina, they know the environment here. It's really,
Right.
I think every Muslim who's been to Medina, I talk to them, they say that's where they want to live. For me, it was the number one option. Uh, I remember coming back in 2016 and looking for jobs online, in accounting,
Mm.
because that was my original background. I went to school for accounting. So,
Mashallah.
it was really far-fetched for me, but it was something I held on to. You never know what can happen in the future. And I remember just
Right.
over the years looking for different jobs online. But yeah, no. To answer your question, yeah, I had a few countries that they want to go to, but like Medina was the number one on top of my list for sure.
To get your consultation from people on the ground in the Muslim world, go to consultation.makehijra.com. Aside from just wanting to go to Medina, you have a small family and you have responsibility, and you have to provide for them, as best you can. So obviously, uh, you have to figure out how you're going to do that. So, what were the opportunities that you saw when you plan before you went to Medina, or once you got to Medina, you decided to check out different opportunities there?
Yeah, so for me, the accounting route never really worked. But in 2023, I visited Medina, alhamdulillah. I came for Umrah 4 times. I remember during that year, I went, I was looking for different options. I made a lot of dua that year, specifically that year in January, for the Medina to open up, to become a reality for me. And um, long story short, when I came back in September that year, and I came across the opportunity as an English teacher. Company was hiring, and they interviewed me, and alhamdulillah, they offered me the role. And a few months later, I was in Medina. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so you got the job from outside of Saudi Arabia, inside Canada, right?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
still in Canada, but I was in Medina when I was interviewed for the job. I was visiting Medina.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of people who search out job opportunities, they tend to go to other Gulf countries like Qatar or UAE or Kuwait, even. Um, so there are opportunities there in Medina for work.
Yeah, definitely there are opportunities. They might not be as many as those places that you mentioned, but there are opportunities for sure. A lot of new developments, and with the Vision 2030 project. So there's Medina's expanding like everywhere I go. I feel like every week there's a new area that's under construction.
So what type of, I mean, okay, if you as an English teacher, um, what are the opportunities there? Is it enough to sustain yourself, or do you find yourself having to teach English and then do other things on the side, tutoring or things like that, or is that enough to sustain a person, just an English teaching job?
Yeah, honestly, it depends because there's a lot of English teaching jobs here, but they vary so much. Like there's full-time
Mm,
jobs, and then there's part-time jobs that are consistent, and then there's part-time jobs that aren't necessarily consistent. What I mean by that is they're on a month-to-month contract. So me, I've been in like all three of those types of jobs. I started
mm,
off as a full-time teacher, and that was for a couple of months, and everything was good. But eventually that school, as soon as I came, they had a complete makeover. Like I came in, I think it was March. By the time June rolled around, the last month of the school year, they told like 40 teachers. It's the biggest. I mean, I don't know how to
mm,
say the name. Okay, it's an international school in Medina. They had a makeover, and they let go of like many teachers. So I was one of them. So I had to
mm,
scramble, find another role before, because I think you have like 3 months to find another job in with a Saudi company, or else you have to leave. So I was in a
mm.
scramble, and alhamdulillah, I found something. But even that, it wasn't consistent. The pay, or like, it wasn't consistent, so the pay wasn't good. And yeah, I mean, the hours were, sometimes they were there, sometimes they were fluctuating. So yeah.
No. Okay, so how did you find out about Muslim Certified?
Yeah, I found out about Muslim Certified in late 2025. I was in a position where, you know, I I had I went through several teaching roles. You know,
Mm,
um, at that time I wasn't working in so around November or December. And I was exhausting my options honestly, like in terms of teaching and places you can teach here. Uh, so I started looking into online remote income opportunities. And
right.
that's when I came across actually a video on the same channel, Make Hijrah, and I saw the Muslim Certify advertisement, and I clicked on it,
Mm.
and Alhamdulillah, I felt good about it. I made dua in terms of guidance, and if this is something good for me, that I would be able to easily transition into. And Alhamdulillah, I was able to join and transition into it, and ever since I joined, I've seen nothing but for me goodness. Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah. So, okay, let's be honest, man, because there are a lot of things out there that are not honest, and a lot of people that want to sell you something and then leave you, like kind of leave you stranded and let you figure it out on your own. So, I mean, what did you initially think about it when you talked to the brothers and they explained the program to you? So, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question because the first time I talked to the brothers, I told them, I'm gonna pray on it, inshallah. So I didn't join right away. I did a lot of due diligence. Naturally,
Mhm.
I am skeptical in nature. So I went back, I did a lot of research. What is appointment setting? What is high ticket sales? And that sort of thing. Extensive research. So, alhamdulillah, I found,
Right.
okay, no, it's a legitimate space, right? There's a lot of people making money in it. And then there's a lot of people making money in it, and there's a lot of haram. There's a big haram side to it as well. So that actually made me even more interested in joining Muslim Certified, because obviously it's a Muslim ran business, and it's the brothers are all Muslim, and it's halal income, alhamdulillah. And after all that, I decided to join, and since I joined it, the mentorship aspect of it has been amazing. The brothers are completely always there for you. Every single day,
Mhm.
you can message them anytime, and they'll always get back to you. They'll always be encouraging. They'll always help you with what you might need. If you have, like, if you're stuck in something, or if you don't understand something, they will always be there to clarify that. Alhamdulillah. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the program, is that the people who are in the program are brothers who are sincere. They're honest. They actually want you to see you succeed. Alhamdulillah. So I'm very happy that I did come across this type of program, and that it was run by Muslims. If if I always tell myself, like, if it wasn't like a Muslim program, I probably wouldn't have joined. Or if I joined, I don't know if I would receive that level of like care, because I think the
So,
brothers are do their best in terms of trying to see you succeed, because obviously you join the program, you're invested in it, and your well-being is invested in it. And the brothers, they do their best to see you succeed. Alhamdulillah, I'm not the only brother who has a success story through Muslim Certified. This is many brothers would tell you the same thing. Alhamdulillah.
so you mentioned that one of the problems with your English teaching career was that it wasn't always stable. Like sometimes you get part time work is stable, sometimes it's not. This, that, and the other. So somebody would argue that okay, so now you've joined Muslim Certify. Is it stable, or are you just going into the same thing where you're kind of uh, chasing the work to see if you can make ends meet?
No, Alhamdulillah, I think there are two completely different spaces. Or like, for example, with teaching, with the teaching job, it's fixed on hours. So your contract might
Mm.
say you work, if it's part-time, like 3 hours a day, right? Or if it's full-time,
Right.
8 hours a day, and then you go home, you also have to put in extra additional hours. With appointment setting, you it's completely performance based. Like, you'll get compensated based on your performance, based on the time you put in, based on the effort you put in. So if you put in more effort, if you go OT, like for example in a traditional job, you might get paid for it depending on what kind of job you're working, or you might not get paid on it, because for typical salaried employees, they don't usually get paid on OT, right? If you're working hourly, you might get paid, but salary, not usually. So with an appointment setting, if you're putting in more time, you'll get more results. If that's compensation or something else. So alhamdulillah, it's definitely different. I'm able to decide my hours and put in the amount of hours that I want to. Right now I'm alone in Medina. Right now my family is overseas, so lately I've been, ever since I joined the program, I've been putting in, essentially all my free time into it, which is basically all my time. And alhamdulillah,
Sure.
I found, alhamdulillah, I found results fairly quickly. Alhamdulillah.
Some people might worry about their compensation and being compensated or being paid in a timely manner and this type of thing. Was that anything that you worried about when you joined the program?
Yeah, I actually asked one of the brothers who helped me, Abu Bilal. I asked him. I remember when I first joined, I asked him, Akhi, I want to have this much saved from the program, have made this much and saved this much by the end of, for example, like by the end of May. And he told me, he's like, that's definitely possible. If you put in the work, if you actually follow the program exactly how it's outlined, and you put in the work, you're doing your part, it's definitely possible. So I took that, and I did my part, alhamdulillah, and I am on track, alhamdulillah, to reaching that and probably surpassing it, inshallah.
To get our help creating a personalized, bulletproof plan to move and stay in your desired Muslim country within 90 days, go to hijraplan.com. For me personally, because we encourage people to make hijrah, but there's kind of like a gap there because some people wonder how would they be able to sustain themselves. There are working opportunities in the Muslim world, but depending on the country, sometimes they they're more focused on like a local economy. So you would have to know how to navigate the local economy in order to survive even. So this is the real reason why we push these type of programs so that people can benefit by having a higher currency where they are, and they're able to save money. You're in a different situation. You're not a local, so if you can make more and you can be able to invest maybe or purchase property or do something over time, that kind of solidifies you more in that place than trying to work and do that. So,
No,
um,
I definitely agree with what you're saying. I've seen it myself. The like if you, first of all, you might is it could be difficult to land a job in the first place in a Muslim country,
mm,
right, where you want to make hijrah. But let's say you do. A lot of times, the job may not be paying the same standards that we're accustomed to in the West. So
mm,
the alternative, which could be appointment setting or something else, online if you're working remotely, kind of fills that gap. If you come here with your family, if you come to a Muslim land with your family and you want to give them a certain, you know, want to be able to provide as a man a certain lifestyle for them, definitely makes it much easier when you have these different options. Working remotely online as appointment setter for me, alhamdulillah, has been, um, that's been the door for me, to be able to do that for my family, alhamdulillah.
mashallah. So, if looking back now, what advice would you give people that are interested in making hijrah, but they're kind of like stuck a little bit there? They have their jobs and they're trying to figure out a way forward. What advice would you give them, especially considering I mean, there are women as well, but we're talking about men in specific. What would you advise those brothers with before they make the move?
I would advise those brothers, to hold on to that goal and to try to make it a reality by, kind of outlining what you need to kind of, check off, what kind of boxes you need to check. Obviously, the biggest one I think is to be able to have a consistent income, right? To be able to provide for yourself and your family. So obviously the second one would be like to be able to have a pathway to how to get there. If you have a big family, for example, you need to make sure that once you get there, you're able to provide them with the shelter, right? Obviously the plane tickets as well before you even get there. Um, so basic necessities. So have a plan to how to do that, have some savings, but it's not something that you should be like, okay, I need like 100,000, in savings. It's not necessary. You don't need that much. You should just go with your intention, which is a good intention, is to go to a Muslim country to seek to get closer to Allah, to seek to get closer to the Deen, and then you check off your boxes, right? And it doesn't have to be crazy. So if you can find a consistent income, if you're not able to find a job overseas, if you're not able to find a job with a Saudi company or a company in the UAE, whatever Muslim country you want to move to, then look into remote options. This is a really, really, really big, I think under rated, route for people to take and to make
Mhm.
hijrah, is to be able, to find something that's remote. And this day and age, there's a lot of many people are making money online remotely. As Muslims, obviously we want to find something that's halal. So if you're able to, honestly, if you're able to find something and you're serious about it, you should definitely pursue it. If it's something that can give you, a remote income.
So, looking back on it, would you advise someone to maybe apply for work and look into appointment setting at the same time, and maybe even start doing it from there before they move? Or what would you say about that?
No, definitely. I would
Mm.
say if you're in a position where are in the West still, and you want to make hijrah, at least have start generating that remote income, whether it's through appointment setting or something else. But if you pick the route of, make if your appointment setting is something that's, something that you see yourself doing, you know, I would say definitely get into it, and then make sure you start generating a consistent income month after month. And then once that happens, you can look into the next steps, inshallah.
All right, bro, man. I appreciate your time, and we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to give you a long stay in Medina, you and your family, and to be buried in Baqiyah, inshallah. Barakallah.